Watch the watch the video where I said gasoline enslavement to understand Trump's snake oil remedies. Trump, his true power behind the throne in 2015 was Carl Icahn. Carl Icahn is a stock investor on Wall Street. He bought out the Taj Mahal for a pay-for-play scheme to alleviate Trump's debt obligations to the shuttered bankrupt casino, the Taj Mahal. It was Carl Icahn that used Trump to corporate invert money into Carl Icahn's gas refinery businesses to prop up his company as a gas refinery plants that he invested in America. Carl Icahn did a quick pay-for-play scheme with Trump. While Trump was saying at his rallies, I know the good negotiators. I know the ones that you never heard of. I know the ones that are underrated. I know the ones that are overrated. I know the great ones. You ever heard of Carl Icahn? Trump kept on bragging about Carl Icahn while Carl Icahn was behind the scenes buying out the Taj Mahal to alleviate Trump's debt obligations to that shuttered uh, bankrupt casino. And it was Carl Icahn that ingratiated Rex Tillerson because Carl Icahn wanted to use the Keystone Pipeline and the Alaska Pipeline to refine uh, Alaska Arctic energy, America's and Canada's Arctic energy. And so Carl Icahn needed to lay down in bed with Rex Tillerson and Exxon board to do that. So Rex Tillerson stepped down as CEO of Exxon to be the oligarch of Trump in the White House as state secretary. And they were trying to get back, and they got back into the Russian Arctic along with BP. So I wonder why Farage was there too, Brexiting with the mega movement. But between Trump extorting Western Europe's inferior GDPs, because you gotta study where the video before this one where it says gasoline enslavement to understand where I'm getting at with these with my philosophies and me explaining the true story of what I have been through in life in this country when it came to Trump's snake oil remedies. I was connecting the dots why Washington was playing a deaf ear because Washington knew that Trump and Rex Tillerson were business racketeering in the Russian Arctic, but bipartisanly they didn't want to panic the petrodollar. They didn't want to panic the markets. They didn't want to undermine the world reserve currency. So they allowed Trump to get away with his scheming and drifting for the love of oil. Now Trump, you gotta understand, he laid down with Abdul because he wanted Exxon to pump energy. Exxon wanted Trump to ensure that the pipeline that Exxon pumped Russian Arctic energy that had to run through Afghanistan into India and into China. Trump laid down with Abdul just as long as Abdul didn't terrorize that pipeline. So in other words, Trump wanted to end the American war with Afghanistan and the Taliban, and all Trump wanted was to give Abdul rule of Afghanistan. In return, Abdul and the Taliban regime has had a promise State Secretary Pompeo under Trump to not terrorize or blow up that pipeline to infringe on the flow of energy of the Russian Arctic. Exxon transmitting fees of flooding India and in China through that pipeline because Exxon eventually wanted to run pipelines into India and China from that particular pipeline. So Trump was willing to lay down with Abdul for it, for the love of oil. And by the time Biden was sworn into office, Abdul already had ransacked the whole government and kicked out the American coalition government that America fought 20 years to rise up a joint coalition government on behalf of America because of what happened on 9/11. Trump was willing to sell all that out. He didn't give a damn. He didn't give a damn about what happened in 9/11. He didn't give a damn if he had to lay down in bed for the love of oil, for the love of profiteering with Abdul and the Taliban, because it was too lucrative for Exxon. So they wanted to make peace with the Taliban. And because of that vacuum of Trump laying down for the love of oil with Abdul and giving Abdul the rule of Afghanistan, the Taliban pulled in that vacuum Asghar Rahimi right back into the Afghan government of the Taliban rule. So because of Abdul, Asghar Rahimi was pulled right back, and he was hiding out in a high-ranking Taliban residence, their house of the high-ranking leader of the Taliban. Asghar Rahimi was hiding out, plotting for new attacks with Al Qaeda and Taliban working together to keep on attacking America. So thanks to Biden, the CIA found out about it and it killed Rasa Kawahibi. But I have to blame Trump for the love of snake oil remedies that sold out to the Taliban just for the love of that pipeline. And so when I was connecting the dots with the Russian collusion, I was from 2015. I was calling the FBI and the CIA and say, "Hey, is Rex Tillerson the power of the throne? He's the oligarch that's using Trump to get back into the Russian Arctic, and it's Carl Icahn trying to use Trump for his gas refinery businesses." I was reaching out to committee hearing members. Nunez was a co-chair of that committee, and he ran and leaked out all the intels to Trump, and Trump vetted out the Justice Department while Robert Mueller was trying to connect the dots, because Congressman Nunez, ran and spilled his guts after I left the intel reports on his phone calls. I left voice messages informing him of the true investigations behind the scenes. So Trump appointed Bill Barr and fired Sessions. And then between Bill Barr and Rosenstein, Trump appointed Christopher Wray to slow up the FBI leads. Basically, they obstructed the biggest obstruction case in the history of Robert Mueller ever witnessed in his career in office. So Trump, and bipartisan, I blame Congress because they know the truth of what was happening in Russia. When they impeached Trump for Ukrainian quid pro quos, they know that Giuliani was over there with two energy partners because they wanted to flood energy from the Russian Arctic into Western Europe. Because Exxon, using Trump, Exxon wanted to flood energy into Western Europe through Ukrainian pipelines. That's why Trump fired the American ambassador when the two energy partners of Giuliani say, "Hey, she has to go because she's standing in the way of us doing energy with Russia." So they fired her. Giuliani, his two energy partners, advised Giuliani to get Trump to fire the American ambassador in Ukraine. So that's why she got fired, because of that pipeline that Exxon wanted to use to flood Russian joint venture energies into Western Europe. It was too lucrative for Exxon. So behind Giuliani and Trump, they fired the American ambassador. And then they were blackmailing Luzinski to find the laptop and to find dirt on Hunter Biden. So they were saying, we're not going to give you military support until you find dirt on Hunter Biden. And so I blame to this day that Washington doesn't talk about the issue because it's too taboo for them to undermine the petrodollar. It's too taboo for them to panic the markets. It's too taboo for them to undermine or ever question the world reserve currency by accusing the fossil fuel interests of America when it comes to this hegemony of supplying the petrodollar, supplying petroleum tradings to the world exchange of nations having to buy petroleum in an American greenback currency. So for that reason, Washington, even though they know the truth, they bite their tongues and don't talk about it. In other words, they allow this gluttony of a snake oil con out of Rockefeller, incarnated Trumpisms, venomous snake that he is with his oil remedies, to keep on pillaging and plundering. Trump, with Steve Bannon, wanted to annex the whole European Union with Trump fascism. Trump extorted Germany, France, Canada, trying to undermine. Steve Bannon was trying to undermine their currency, the Eurozone currency, telling them to dissolve it. With him and Farage and Steve Bannon, they wanted to undermine and annex other members of the European Union to try to spread fascism. Steve Bannon defrauded his Build the Wall Foundation to wine and dine leaders like the fascist president of Italy. Steve Bannon went over there to support her. Leaders like Orbach that are willing to spread fascism of Trump. That's what's in it for Steve Bannon. He sees that he's the power behind Trump. Steve Bannon is riding the coattails of Trump to this delusional fascism of Trump. Steve Bannon wants to break America into a civil war, a revolution of Trump, and he wants to do the same thing in Europe. While Trump is just busy thinking about, if I do these snake oil deals behind the scenes with these regional powers, then somehow I can have access to real estate deals. because these regions will depend on my administration and my connecting these oil industries to flood their regions with gasoline and petroleum. Then these leaders will have to incentivize their banks in their countries to afford me real estate deals when I apply for loans. That's how Trump is thinking. Trump is thinking like, if I can bridge these pipelines, if I can flood these regions with Exxon board members, then these leaders and their financial sectors will have to be depending on Exxon and my administration, so I can apply for liquidity bank loans for real estate endeavors in these regions, like Trump was trying to do with the Moscow Tower, the Trump Moscow Tower. But like I said, bipartisanly, Congress don't talk about this. They hypocritically pretend that this is not happening in the public eye. When it comes to the media, addressing the media, they say, see no evil, talk no evil, hear no evil, say no evil. And they ignore Trump's snake con artist ways. And they're too afraid, the Democrats, to address the truth issue because they don't want to panic the petrodollar as the world reserve currency. They don't want to jeopardize and panic the Treasury Department, the Federal Reserve, or let alone the stock markets. So Trump has immunity on these issues. But that's how corrupt this government is of capitalism, depending on enslaving the world to the whims of the gasoline guzzlers throughout the world's infrastructure. That's all cars throughout the world majority depend on gasoline. That's pegged to the petrodollar of the greenback. When countries want to buy oils, they only have to pay for it and have to pay for it with American greenbacks. So Trump, as he descends down those golden escalator as a pagan god of greed, he extorts Germany to try to undermine Nord Stream 1, Nord Stream 2. He tariffs France because of the Paris Accords, but he lies and says it's because of the wines, French wine and French cheese. The same for Canada when it comes to the Arctic, that's in the shores of Canada. He tariffs them and says, oh, it's for the milk, the dairy industries. And he tariffs the Europes with their fragile GDPs, saying that somehow they owe us. And he's going to keep on extorting them by taking and taking and taking, because somehow their leaders are raping us. But Trump doesn't realize, and the politicians in Capitol Hill doesn't realize, that there's a gluttony of this gasoline enslavement that's run amok. So while I was participating in connecting the dots in the shadows since 2015, revealing to the FBI and the CIA that Carl Icahn and Rex Tillerson was Trump's oligarchs, and they were embezzling the White House for a get-rich Ponzi scheme within their oil holdings and interests in the fossil fuel interest deals of Exxon and Carl Icahn Industries, and how they were the true power behind Trump's foreign policies. Because of it, Nunez, because I was in time leaving voice messages in their mailbox when they were investigating the Russian Trump collusion, and Nunez was the ranking chair that was in charge of overseeing the Russian collusion House Representatives inquiry into the Trump Russian collusion investigation. Nunez ran to the White House. The White House, they had a pizza party that night, and Nunez went to the White House that particular night. They had a pizza party, and he revealed all the dirt that I was investigating on Trump, and Trump vetted out. He, through Bill Barr, Rosenstein, and Christopher Wray, they made it impossible for Robert Mueller to find out any more investigations when it came to Trump and the Russian collusion that implicated Exxon. So they obstructed Mueller from ever completing his report. And like I said, bipartisanly, both parties were afraid to talk about this in the public arena. They didn't want to talk about this in the media, so they never addressed it, and they never outed Trump's oil interests with his administrators. And so they basically allowed Trump to pillage and plunder the world for the love of gasoline. They turn a blind eye to it to this day. Hypocrisy bipartisanly in the Senate and the House. It's like they have a policy all hands off when it comes to this issue. See no evil, talk no evil, say no evil. And so, because like I said, the government doesn't want to panic the markets. They don't want to undermine their position as a well reserved currency, let alone the oil being pegged to the greenback. So Trump got away with being a robber baron for the oil interests of America. It's a snake venomous con artist of a Rockefeller. I gotta keep on saying he's a Rockefeller bastard incarnated as a chief and commander. He's a drifter. He's a con artist. He's a swindler for the love of oil. And you gotta understand, Trump, when he laid down with Abdul, it was for the love of oil. When Trump pulled Carl Icahn into his administration, it was for the love of oil. Carl Icahn did a pay for play and bought out the Taj Mahal debt obligations to the bank. That's why Trump fell in love with Carl Icahn and put him as a chief White House economic advisor. And then it was Carl Icahn that wanted to lay down in bed with Exxon because Carl Icahn wanted to get Keystone Pipeline, Alaskan Pipeline, to flood petroleum into his gas refinery businesses. So between Carl and Rex Tillerson, they were the true power of oligarch Trump was their puppet. And so Trump was in it for Trump. If he can bridge these deals of Exxon flooding energy into Western Europe from the Russian Arctic, if he can bridge the deal of Exxon flooding India with Russian Arctic energy and into China, then those countries, if Trump made those deals, they would be indebted to Trump administration. So Trump, when he applies for real estate loans in those regions, those banks would make liquidity bank loans available to his real estate deals, like he was trying to do at the Moscow Tower, the Trump Moscow Tower. Anyway, capitalism run amok, and when the world is enslaved with gasoline, you gotta understand, it's the truth and nothing but the truth. So help me goodness. That bipartisanly to this day, Congress hypocritically are sniveling fools that are too scared to speak truth to words. And I'm talking directly to the Democrats. They're sniveling fools that cower behind the behind closed doors, and they hush when it comes to this issue of Trump's corruption and the fossil fuel interests within his administration. They don't want to speak truth to words, the Democrats, because they're afraid that, if we out Trump as a Ponzi scheme racketeer, business racketeer, embezzling the Oval Office for the love of oil, then that will panic the Wall Street. That will get us displaced from being the world reserve currency, and the world won't want to buy oil with American dollars. So for that reason, and for that reason only, Democrats are too bitching, cowarding in the closed doors, afraid to speak the truth to words as hypocrites. They turn a blind eye to this type of action and behavior by this snake oil, venomous snake Trump. And to this day, the fascist Republicans want to appoint Trump again for 2024 because he's making America energy independent, at the same time enslaving the world to the greenback petrol gasoline dollar that floods oil to all nations while they refine it into gasoline so they can power their transportation vehicles throughout the world's transportation grids. So the world and the gasoline supply is pinned to the greenback. And these sniveling Democrats, cowarding fools, don't want to speak truth to words. They're two hypocrites when they swear themselves in with the hypocritical oath. They realize they're hypocrites. But for the love of greed, for the love of capitalism, for the love of oil run amok with Trump, they turn a blind eye to it. And that's what's sad about this situation. That's what's really sad, is that the Democrats, even though they want to prosecute Trump for crimes, they don't want to call it for what it is. They don't want to see it for what it is. See no evil, talk no evil, say no evil when it comes to America's reserve currency, when it comes to America's petrodollar. They turn a blind eye and they swear to hypocrisy to defend our nation. But in reality, they're just as corrupt and snake and venomous and slippery as Trump's remedies. Because they're too coward to speak truth to words. I blame them for being weak on this issue. I blame them for being accomplices to Trump on this issue. When they really talk about the Trump-Russian collusion, they don't want to go there. Because they're afraid of the truth being spoken in American politics. Anyway, I can substantiate my proofs, my communications with the FBI, the CIA, and the government since 2015. I can substantiate it. But they don't want it, so they bury my channel, they bury my YouTube channel, they keep it invisible. They lie to the media and impose it. Oh, it's a matter of national security, so you can't talk about these type of issues. So they avoid from in the media, the reporters, they all knew what was going on with Trump and Russian collusion. All of them knew it was for the love of Rex Tillerson and the next on board members. All of the American media knew the truth and nothing but the truth. But they were too afraid of being pressured by the government to be fined. They call it slander laws. Because the FBI say, oh, we don't have no evidence. The Justice Department said, we don't have no evidence. So the media can't report on it because the government will impose fines on through the FCC on these news corporations. Because if the Justice Department didn't talk about it, if the FBI didn't talk about it, then the media can't report on it because it will be slandered laws. But in reality, behind the scenes, everybody knew what was going on with Trump in the Russian Arctic for Exxon profiteering. Everybody knows it. But the country and just the governance of hypocrisy doesn't make it an issue. That's something that should be talked on the news or on the public arena. Bipartisanly, they sweep it underneath the rug. So I blame this gasoline enslavement bipartisanly on both sides of the aisles within the House of Representatives and in the Senate. And I blame the media for kowtowing to pressure and not reporting the truth. So the Democratic Party plays like a big game, like they're defending America against Trump fascism. But they don't call Trump out for what he is, a venomous snake oil con artist. They don't call him out for those issues. They're weak-spined. They kowtow to the Trump corruption and the fossil fuel interest deals of him and his oligarch handlers of Exxon Board and Car Icon Industries. They're too afraid. So now the Republicans, the fascist good old boys, the party of big business, they want to impose Trump for a second term for 2024. And the Democrats are arguing issues and turning a blind eye to the truth corruption of Trump because they're too afraid to panic the petrodollar. They're too afraid to contradict Trump and undermine the world reserve currency that floods the world with gasoline through the sale of petroleum in American currency. So now America is facing a demagoguery of Trump towards brown peoples, towards Africans, towards Arabs. And I'm talking about Americans, citizens that are happy not to be liking Trump fascism, but these Republican alt-rights that Trump's majority base of xenophobic supporters are cheering him on. The more he strokes xenophobia against African civil rights, against brown migrants and their integrities, against Arabs and their faiths. It's like the Democrat Party tries to play a big game by we're defending America from fascism, from Trumpisms. But in reality, bipartisanly, they kowtow and allow Trump to get away with being a snake oil con artist drifter that he is. And to me, to this day, this country is a land of hypocrites, bipartisanly. They're not willing to out Trump for the corruption that he truly is. And so, into the Democratic Party outs Trump for his true illegalities, for his true sins of embezzling the White House to get rich for these special oil interests. And to the Democratic Party talks truth to words, they will be also complicit, aiding and abiding this racketeering administration of Trump fascism. So I'm disappointed in the Democrats for being complicit in turning a blind eye to the truth, as they swear to uphold the laws and defend the land and defend the Democratic Party of citizens of America against Trump fascism. In reality, behind their backs, they got their fingers crossed when it comes to not outing Trump for the fuel corruption of fossil fuels in his administration. They're basically giving Trump a get-out-of-jail-free card, the Democratic Party. They don't want to hold a fascist alt-right in contempt and prosecute them through courts for the truth and nothing but the truth. The Democrats are kowtowing behind closed doors on this issue. They're basically aiding and abiding Trump by turning a blind eye to his corruption in the fossil fuel interests of America. They're just as guilty, the Democratic Party, of having knowledge of Trump's corruption in the Oval Office with his oil oligarchs, but then they turn a blind eye to it. So I'm more mad at the Democratic Party for being hypocrites and scared, sniveling, scared, trembling behind closed doors because they don't want to speak truth to words when it comes to Trump 4 years in office. And now the fascist good old boy party wants to impose this demagoguery, hegemony of gasoline enslavement, keep the party going, keep the fuel flowing, keep the octane pumped. We're voting for Trump because he makes America great again. He makes America energy independent. Knowing that Trump is enslaving the whole world to the dependency of gasoline from Exxon board members, the Democrats don't want to out it for the truth for what it is. Business racketeering, abuse of office, quid pro quos, and Trump's corruption by vetting out the government to cover up his oligarchs' Ponzi scheming, racketeering, conniving ways under the Trump banner. So the Democrats are just as guilty to be shameless when it comes to hypocrisy. They're the biggest hypocrites when it comes to this issue of Trump fossil fuel corruption. I blame them for not having a backbone to stand up and talk truth to words.